Hello and welcome back to another episode of KSP POV, where we play Kerbal Space Program in first person. Today we are finishing up our third and final installment of the Return to Minmus mission, I guess, where we took a rover onto the surface of Minmus. We lost a Kerbal in the process, and now we need to figure out how to pick up the Kerbal that survived, rendezvous them with the ship, and then have that ship hopefully safely come home. So let's get started. So here we are once again with Urwise Kerman at the memorial site, and now she's got the responsibility of continuing the mission to reach Minmus's flats, research a bunch of science, bring that science back to the capsule. But we are many, many kilometers away from that capsule, and all going uphill. Something you may have noticed a little bit different is now Minmus has some rocks on it. Before, when we were flying down the hills, going very fast and not a care in the world, there were no rocks, and that is because we have since installed Parallax 2.0 that gives ground scatter to many of the celestial bodies in the Kerbal system, as well as we have activated the collision mode on them, so every single one of those rocks has mass. We can't just sail clear on through them. I like having collision on. It adds a different challenge to it, and I believe it adds a lot of realism. So since Urwise is in the front seat, we're gonna allow third person a little bit, since there's no way to control through the eyes of the Kerbal. But you'll see in a little bit that we do end up using the front forward-facing camera a little bit. So now everything is very slow going. We're only going about 1.4 meters per second, 1.5. And I'm, jamming on the throttle. I'm going full blast, but there's really no need to go full blast because we are going to be picking up speed here very soon. It's all downhill from here. I just want to take a moment to appreciate these wheels. If you notice that they're slightly transparent, the outsides are slightly transparent, and the wheel is moving around on the inside, and it seems to be made of a wire mesh and everything. And this is very similar to a style of wheel that we've been developing in real life, and I appreciate that. I always, when I first saw that type of wheel, I was very interested in it, and now that I have unlocked it in our series, and I get to spend more time looking at it since we've been doing a lot more rover things, I've been really enjoying it. I like the attention to detail that the developers and the mod makers have for this game. So we're going back and forth between third person and the camera. I take a quick second to check on the life supplies of both this craft and the main lander can. So I have to be careful. This rover doesn't turn very well on Minmus. It just likes to skate around instead. Try to turn a direction and it'll just keep going in the direction that it was going, just facing a different way. So any turns or maneuvers I make has to be done early on and very slight. As you see, I'm just barely pulling myself over. And the idea here is I'm hoping to go up that hill to kind of kill off some of my speed, and then hook a right to go back down the hill and hit those flats over there to the right. I put on the brakes to just kind of ease my speed. I'm going dangerously fast now. if Urwise were to hit a rock or fall off the seat in some way, she'd be going so fast she would probably end up killing herself. So we got to be careful about that. And so now there's rocks in our direct path, and so going up the side of the hill is seeming to be less of an option. But there's also rocks coming into view all over the place, so I'm not entirely sure which is the best way to go. I throw on the brakes, but then as you see, my back end starts lifting up really high, so I throw on the reaction wheel to kind of bring myself back down. Yeah, having brakes on while going at high speeds is not always advisable. So Urwise kills the brake and just decides to go with the flow, not to fight it. But now it's a minefield ahead of her that she sees. And not only that, the flats now look much farther away than they had before. It's a curse of roving in first person is your sense of distance gets skewed a little bit. So now we give up on the idea of coming up that hill. We're also going very fast, so we may end up just clearing the hill, going straight over, and missing the flats entirely. So we decided to skip that idea and try to curve our way to the flats and just try to kill off our speed once we get there, once we hit the bottom part of the slope. And I take another look to see where I'm at, and I realize, yeah, I'm pretty far away. This is it was a great distance between where we ended up landing and the flats. So we're just cruising along, trying not to be too nervous about our speed. Just trying to accept whatever fate we may have. And the hard part about roving, for me, the player anyways, is I cannot time warp. Because we're moving over the surface, it doesn't allow us to time warp even physical warp, even one count up. So all of this has to be done in real time. So once again, we try to hit the brakes to kill some speed, bring ourselves down to a little bit less of a breakneck, but in doing so, it causes our craft to kind of seize up and pitch forward. So we're very thankful that the engineers back on Kerbin put a reaction wheel in this. Gives us a lot more control. Without the reaction wheel, this rover may have never actually even been able to run, because when we landed, it was upside down. And without the reaction wheel, we may have never been able to flip it over. So it's a good thing. So I'm starting to enter the minefield. I entered a little while ago, but I was talking over it. But we're now into the field of scatter. And the flats have now disappeared from our view. We're down low enough on the hill that we can't see it anymore. And all we can see is the danger, destruction, and death ahead of us. Because like I said, these rocks have collision. Typically they don't when you just install parallax just by its own. They don't have any collision. You can just drive straight on through them. They're more for looks. But the option to add collision and give them a solid mass can prove deadly if we hit it. It can break wheels off, it can send our Kerbal flying, it can just straight up blow up the craft. And like I said before, I enjoy that challenge. I enjoy that realism. Shouldn't have zoomed out the way that I did. It's POV after all, but I just very thrown off by how far away it seems. So yeah, nothing really to talk about. We're just cruising. More rocks. Thankfully, we're kind of lined up to miss most of them. It seems that we're kind of out of the worst of it now. Can just cruise on forward at our just unreasonable speed. We're going, what, 14 meters per second now? I believe something along the lines of 9 meters per second is the limit you can do before your Kerbal gets too much forces. And so now Urwise decides to play around a little bit, but it's for a reason. She remembers that the reaction wheel can tip the nose up, and she's seeing that it's going to be a hard angle once we leave the lowlands and hit the slopes. It's going to be a hard angle to transfer over, and there's a very good chance that we're just going to hit that and break our front wheels. So she decides, oh, there's a little stone, a little moonstone, or Minmus stone. But anyways, yeah, she decides to lift her front up, so that way if once she hits the front, it'll be once she hits the flats, it'll be her back wheels that touch first. And by the time her back wheels touch, she'll be at the right angle that her front wheels should touch at the exact same time and continue going flat. And again, of course, it seems a lot closer than it is, so she's been wheeling for much longer than she needed to. But it seems to be holding steady, so she's not too worried. She transfers over a smaller slope, a slope within the slope. She gains a little bit of air, and then her wheels hit something and launches her. But once again, the reaction wheel is the true MVP of this mission. She's able to regain control, regain her positioning, and safely come back down. A little bit of a bump, a little bit of a hard landing, but all in all, safe and okay. So now that we're coming a lot close, we're gonna lift up again. Don't like that it's an angled position that we're going to be coming in. I would have preferred to have it flat, so both back wheels left the lowlands at the same time. As you see here, it worked out. We didn't jam on our front wheel or anything. We landed well, and so now it's just a matter of throwing on the brakes so we can come to a nice clean stop. I go ahead and do the science experiments for the new biome that we're in. And I'm skating around a lot, so I try to turn myself around and drive forward in attempts to cancel out some of my momentum, but it doesn't help. So I just bring myself around, and before I know it, I'm flipping around once again, and very nervous about this because, again, I'm going fairly fast, and if I were to land the rover sideways, there's a very good chance it would flip. So I'm using my brakes, just trying to kill as much speed as I can. We've got all this room. We're in the flats now, so I'm not worried of missing the biome or anything like that. You know, it's we're here. We just need to come to a stop. We just need to be safe. And then we need to collect all the science and then figure out how we're going to get back to the ship. Because that was all uphill, and as you saw, this thing does not like to go uphill. It's basically a glider. It just glides with the path of least resistance. So yeah, we covered quite a distance from that, and we curved a little bit, but yeah, that was a lot of speed. Here we are. We're just coming back, and once again the brakes are causing our back end to pitch upwards. I look away for a couple seconds to check. I don't remember, I was checking my phone or something, but I looked away for just enough time to miss this whole flip at all. I wasn't controlling it, and then you see my mouse became active. I'm like, oh no. So I bring ourselves right back down to safety, and I tell myself, yeah, maybe don't look away from the mission until it's complete. There we go, and we are basically stopped. So I go ahead and get Urwise out. We're going to need to do a surface sample, need to collect all these science experiments. I do end up forgetting to collect the 2 sub-satellites that are on the front. You can see right there to the left, the things that are attached to our life support. I forgot to grab those, so that's a whole bunch of science that we don't have. So yeah, so now I'm restoring everything, grabbing everything, because we're going to leave this rover on the planet, and maybe we'll come back and use it. Sadly, the scanning arm broke on the front, so we're not going to be able to scan any rock formations with it. So in order to complete one of those contracts, which we will actually end up grabbing, we're going to need to bring a different rover. So I go ahead and plop Urwise into the scientist seat, so that way she can keep her life support active, and we decide we're going to take the ship over. But when we switch to it, the physics freak out and pop the ship upwards. I'm very nervous of it breaking itself, because that wasn't any fault of our own. So here we go ahead and target the rover, and once again we hop back into the IVA mode, and that is how we are going to get ourselves over to her. Herbal is ready to come home. He's been sitting in this capsule this whole time, getting radio updates from the rest of the crew, relaying them back to mission control. But he's ready to come home. So he lifts off from the surface very easily, and then slowly pitches towards where Urwise is. So we get ourselves a little vertical momentum, and then we turn it into horizontal momentum. And that's enough to put us close to where the rover is. And we're just setting up our screen so we can do our landing as best we can. Even though it is the flats, we still need to be very careful about the angle in which we land on. And we can see the flats coming into view. We time warp a little bit, very careful not to pass our suicide burn countdown. So as you can see, we're going at about 47 meters per second, plus the negative 71 meters per second that we're falling to the surface, so quite fast. And then as you see, we throw the throttle on. You can see that the meters per second of our speed is slowly or very quickly dropping, actually. That's that and the thrust to weight ratio on our nav ball is all that's really telling us that we're activating our suicide burn. And of course we do it a little bit early, and that causes us to overshoot a little bit and puts us almost into an ascent. So now I move away from the retrograde marker to kind of push it back towards the center to give us a lot less horizontal velocity. And coming in for a suicide burn, go ahead and lock to prograde. I fire too fast and go ascending once more. So I switch myself to prograde quickly so I don't flip entirely upside down. Have to do a lot of maneuvers. Our alarm goes off for our tumble alarm goes off. I forgot to mention, but for a good portion of this mission, the audio did not capture. So I apologize that it's been missing a lot of the things, the sounds of the rocket engine, the sounds of the proximity warnings, but we have it later for when we come home. But yeah, sometimes my when I do particularly long recordings, they have a tendency of failing in one way or another. So now that we've landed, we go ahead and put the solar panels back out, and just kind of sit here again, wait for our rover and Urwise to come meet us. Then I realized we ended up overshooting because of all those course corrections we ended up having to do. We overshot the rover. But instead of relaunching the lander and trying to get closer, we decide we're on a rover. We can just drive there. We got plenty of life support. But because Urwise is in the scientist seat and not the pilot seat, we decided to take over the roving from mission control, since it does have a probe core on it and we have control of it. So we go ahead and get our screen set up. Sadly, I can't have the landing screen and the camera at the same time. I don't know why. Typically it does work, but for some reason it's glitching out and not working here. So I use a reaction wheel to just direct myself towards the target. Not always the best because it doesn't change my forward direction very, very quickly, so I have to just kind of ease it over. We got plenty of life support. We really overpacked on life support in both the lander and the rover with this one, but after we lost a Kerbal to a lack of life support, we vowed to never do that again. No one will go hungry on our missions. So yeah, we've got quite a distance to cover, so it's going to speed up the footage a bit. It was all in all kind of an uneventful little trip. And because we're in the flats, there's very little, if any, scatter to be had here, so I don't need to do any maneuvering around rocks or anything. All I need to do is make sure that I can kill my speed by the time we reach that, and we don't end up crashing straight into the ship. I change around the telemetry, the vessel viewer over there on the right, to be something just a little more interesting. Just give it a little bit of rotation. I think it was fun to look at. So yeah, still got quite a bit of a distance. So I'm going to go ahead and speed it up even more now. It's the footage that's being sped up, not the rover. The rover's just going as fast as it can, given its abilities. So I put a waypoint marker using the mod waypoint finder, and this allows us to see just how far away we are from the craft. Having it targeted is good because it shows us which direction we need to go, and there is some information to be had on the screen to the left as far as target distance and relative whatnot, but I preferred the waypoint marker. I feel it was just slightly more intuitive. It's hard to read, but it's the middle, it's the two white lines with yellow numbers in the middle of the screen, right above where it says Minty. And that tells us our distance and our time to the target. So it gives us a better idea of our positionings and how close we're getting to it. And that'll tell us when we need to start slowing down. Because I feel by the time we see it on the camera, it's probably going to be too late. We're probably going to be still going too fast. So our only options would be to swerve to miss it. But at that point, we may end up overshooting it by a lot and then having to turn around. So it's a bit precarious, this mission. And Urwise is trying to be calm, considering that she's going very, very fast and not even facing the direction to where she can see. So she doesn't know that there's no scatter. She doesn't know that the ship will be coming up. She's got no idea. But she trusts in the mission control. She trusts in Gene Kerman. And for that, she will definitely earn her stripes. So we switch over to Craft Specialist and throw on the brakes for a little bit, trying to kill some of that velocity. And we start to see the ship. It's a little dark, but we can definitely spot the landing legs. So we go ahead and throw on the brakes. But of course, our brakes are set to 200%, and we're not going downhill. So they work a little bit better. So she's close enough. I decided to just leave the rover here. We're going to go ahead and take her out. Once again, forgetting some of the science to be brought back. And it sucks too, because those were some pretty high-level experiments. Got a lot of science from that. So we take one last look at the minty hair, and we say goodbye. We clear straight over our craft. Have to push forward a lot to change our direction. So when we go to board, we find it a little bit difficult to board, and then we realize that's because we have some duplicate experiments. So I'm very thankful that we brought these little science recorder or storage units along, so we were able to just store the science in there. So it doesn't matter if we have duplicates, and then we go ahead and hop into the ship. Take one last look at it, all of its glory, and then we return to IVA mode. So we lock our stages because we don't want to lose anything before we're ready to lose it. We set up our cameras, we set up our vessel view, we set up our nav ball, orbiting information, all the stuff we need. And then we launch. We are now on our way out of Minmus. At 50 kilometers, I kill the engine, but I realize I'm still not high enough to clear the mountains that we're going to be flying over. I go ahead and lift the landing gear. We have a pretty high apoapsis here. We're going to add a maneuver here to circularize. And we're going to plot that into flight computer. But then I realized we don't have flight computer because there's no probe core on this stage of the craft. The probe core that we were using before was the rover's probe core. So I go ahead and forget how to split a node in half, how to split my burn in half on the node, and I just wait until the node to fire. So not efficient, but you know, sometimes when you're just in a rush, you forget some things. But thankfully, it wasn't in an atmospheric situation or anything like that. It's just Minmus, so we can afford to be off. And it's because I'm coming in at such a funky angle. This is my orbit is at such a funky angle. I go ahead and I'm going to try to balance out the inclination to get a better shot at returning home. So now we're plotting in, and it's showing us we've got such a huge orbit around Kerbal. We basically have just the lunar orbit. So then I go, and that I was going at the apoapsis, and then so I decided to leave at the periapsis, or do my burn at the periapsis instead, and I get a drastically different result from it. I'm very happy with it. I'm able to pull ourselves basically back to orbit. So we get ourselves above the 70 kilometer Kármán line, and once again we do our maneuver. This time I remember how to split the burn time in half over the node. For those who might not be familiar, you're supposed to burn half of your maneuver before the maneuver node, and then half of it after, and that is the most effective way of completing a maneuver. So now we're looking at our delta V to tell us when to stop, and there we go. Let me do a little more, do just a little more, and then 0.16. I think that's good. I think we're relatively where we need to be. So we go ahead and add a maneuver here, and we circularize. So now we are going to be just above the Kármán line once we get there, and we have plenty of fuel. We don't need to aero brake at all. Since there's no flight computer though, I don't have a way of automatically killing my time warp when we reach the maneuver, so I have to just do it manually and be very, very careful. If I miss the mark and we end up having to go all the way back out to our apoapsis, that's about a 15-day journey. So that will take off a lot of life support. So instead, I just try to be very careful, very judicious with my time warping. Five. 2. 1. And burn. It's a long burn. I went ahead and sped up the footage a bit just to get ourselves there a little bit more quickly. But yeah, we burned for quite a bit, about 2 minutes worth of burn. But we have 5 engines, so our thrust to weight ratio is very good, very, very good. And we kill. There we are. Nice stable orbit just above this line of space. Of course we are at a weird angle, but that doesn't really matter. We would have liked to come in a little more equatorial so that way we could aim to land at the KSC, but that's not going to be the case, so we just decide to land wherever we can. as long as it's on the light side, so that way we can see what we're doing. I raise my throttle, drop my periampsis, and we are coming home now. I can go ahead and we're going to point radially out. I'm going to go ahead and look at the planet. And when we stage, I forget that our camera is on the side boosters. And of course we're going to just waste all the fuel in that, in the tank that was, the tank in the engine that was meant to bring us home. We didn't end up needing any of that fuel, so we just jettisoned it. But better than having it still attached to our craft when we re-enter the atmosphere. It's best just to have our heat shield. Since we don't have any cameras, we decided to just take the view that Urwise has, looking at all those clouds. Once again, this is the first episode on this series. We did it in the Escaping Kerbin, but this is the first episode in this series that we have volumetric clouds. So I'm very excited to enter through them. This is the first time that these Kerbals have ever seen it. They were told that the climate had changed while they were gone. Now we're coming more straight down. We are no longer on fire. We made it straight safely through the hard part of the atmosphere. And we don't fall through a cloud, but we can definitely see the clouds and their movements and everything as we descend with our parachutes. And our parachutes dropped when they were supposed to, so we safely made it splash down on Kerbin. This mission has been declared a success. So now all they gotta do is wait for the rest of them to sail out and fly out and come pick them up. So I got a whole mess of science from that. So much science. The people in the labs are very happy. They've got a lot to work on in the next coming months. And since both of our Kerbals were very heroic, they gained a lot of reputation from that. But they still haven't forgotten their fallen comrade. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. That is where I'm going to conclude the series, the 3-part series of returning to Minmus for KSP POV. We may take a short break before the next video. So hopefully stay tuned and look around for that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.